Hey all, so today we're going to be looking at A4.1, which is the evidence of evolution. And we're trying to answer the question, what evidence is there of evolution? How do analogous and homologous structures exemplify commonality and diversity? And so that goes with our theme, which is unity and diversity. And we're looking at page 137 to 154. And I apologize in advance. I'm at the school right now and it's summer vacation, and they're doing a bit of construction. So I've heard some like drilling and knocking and some buzzing. So I apologize for that if there is a bit of background noise. So firstly, evolution is the change of heritable characteristics of a population. This occurs gradually over many generations, resulting in an overall change in the population. So this mechanism is the mechanism that drives evolution is natural selection. And this is not the same as acquired characteristics. So acquired characteristics are things like learning a language or building bigger muscles or wind bending trees. This is not related to the genetics of that organism, which would be passed on to their offspring. And change is not related to acquired characteristics. So like the best tennis players don't have genetically superior tennis player babies. Learning how to play tennis is a skill that you learn. Whether or not you have the body or the fitness level to achieve that, that's totally different. And that might be dictated somewhat by genetics, but the skill of playing tennis is a learned skill. And so Lamarck said that acquired characteristics would be passed on to offspring, and Lamarck and Darwin were around the same time, and he was wrong. And Darwin was right with natural selection. And you are best suited to the environment that you're in, and you're reproductively superior. And so you pass on your DNA to your offspring. Dead people or organisms don't have babies and they don't pass on their DNA. So what genetic evidence is there for evolution? DNA and RNA changes result in different amino acid sequences, but we can see all across the different organisms that we have very similar DNA and RNA. More related species, though, are going to have more similar DNA. And the difference is only explained by the splitting of species due to evolution. So changes happened in their DNA over time in different areas. The Hox gene organizes body structure, and they're similar in all animal species, with some having more Hox genes and some having less. And so fossils also show change over time. And so this is an example of horse evolution. And so we can see how the toes are very gradually changing, the size of the horse is changing, but due to the fossil record, we can see change occurring over time. And so these are Hox genes here. And so the different color combos with this insect versus this baby are going to indicate what components these dictate for. And so we can see here clearly that Hox genes are coding for very similar structures in different organisms. And so as a result, some genetic components are changing very little, and other genetic components can change a lot. And then obviously we can see selective breeding. We can all know how dogs look different from each other, but they're all classified as the same species. Artificial selection can cause evolution as opposed to natural selection. And this is what's happened for most of our agricultural products and domestic livestock. So corn used to just be this like little type of grass with seeds on it, and over time it was selected for the kernels and the kernels and the kernels being bigger and bigger and bigger, and now we have corn as we know it. And then wild mustard has led to, through selection, artificial selection, through farming practices, all the different types of many different types of vegetables that we eat: kohlrabi, kale, cabbage, broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts. All of those come from this original wild mustard plant. And some of them are the flowers, and some of them are the stems, and some of them are the roots, a bunch of different components of this wild mustard plant. And we can see in only 12,000 years of farming with the corn and the wild mustard, how dramatically these organisms have changed. And so then we also have homologous structures. And so these structures, like the pentadactyl limb, which you can see right here, may look superficially different and perform different functions, but structurally are almost identical. So these are homologous structures. They came from similar ancestors. They do not prove evolution, but they're difficult to explain without evolution. And so all of these organisms are mammals, and they all have pentadactyl limbs. And so with that in mind, we can suggest that mammals came from the same origin ancestor. Meanwhile, in an octopus, which is very unrelated to a human, we have an analogous structure, which looks structurally similar, but arose from different ancestors to accomplish the same purpose. And so human and octopus eyes function very, very similarly, but arose two different times for two different organisms from different ancestors. And the purpose of that is that we can see here, like, obviously that eye structure provides some kind of beneficial advantage to those organisms in the environments that they're in. So without evolution, we also cannot explain vestigial structures like the appendix. That used to be, is present in humans, and it used to be an extension of the small intestine that allowed for longer digestion times of greenery, when potentially as monkey hominids, we ate more, but now with cooking of food, we don't really need it. Baleen whales have baby teeth, but they have baleen, which is like these long stringy teeth things. So where are these teeth coming from? This is crazy. So without that, also snakes have tiny leg bones. Why do they have tiny leg bones? So those are other factors that can be used to explain evolution. So speciation is the separation of species for some reasons that are, like, for example, geography, and it causes them to diverge. So they look or behave differently. And if they cannot mate, then they cannot mate when they are reunited. So they're new species if they can't mate. And natural selection is going to push divergent traits in different environments. And those environments might be related to climate changes, or it could be related to the predators that they're experiencing, or a competition for resources. And if they stop interbreeding, this can also lead to speciation, and this would be related to reproductive isolation, and that's going to prevent gene flow. So no longer are those two species able to swap genetics. So differential selection is when new environments are applying different environmental selection pressures. And this is often what's happening with this speciation process. And so there's a bunch of lizards that live in the Canary Islands, and these are, sorry, in the Galapagos Islands. And these 7 species of lava lizards occur on the island. And they have a lot of different colors and patterns and sizes. And this is just specific to the types of soil color. So you can see this one blending into the soil, and the soil is not quite the same color here. This one has more leaves and stuff. It's on trees. And so the sizes of these have changed as they've moved to different island environments. So to summarize, for SL content, evolution is change that happens over time to a species such that it has different characteristics, and these are passed on genetically. Evidence is homologous structures, fossils, selective breeding, and continuous variation. So we see that in the fossil record. And then speciation is when two species diverge due to reproductive isolation and the actions of natural selection when they are reproductively isolated. So for SL, you can stop here. HL, we're continuing on. So different types of speciation. Allopatric speciation is geographic separation that results in speciation. And this is a more common situation. And so allopatric, meaning like that you have different homelands. So this here is an image of allopatric speciation. Sympatric speciation, populations diverge despite being in the same region. You have the same homeland, sympatric, but you stop breeding for those species, stop breeding for whatever reason. And so that could be behavioral, it could be temporal separation. And that can result in reproductive isolation. And so maybe they're reproductively viable at different times of year for some reason. So these adaptations are characteristics that make a species well suited to their environment. And these are just going to arise through general mutations, or be characteristics that allow an organism to survive well in their environment. And when species move into a new area, they may not be able to interbreed with other species, so they start to diverge from their original population. They may move into a niche that's not being occupied, and adaptive radiation is where populations spread out and occupy a range of ecological roles. And this can increase biodiversity because those organisms begin to change because of natural selection. So different characteristics are going to allow them to be successful and pass on their DNA. So hybridization is often done deliberately, but can result in reproductive issues. So mules are really great as pack animals. They're bigger than donkeys, and they're stronger than horses. So that's great. But also they have 63 chromosomes, whereas donkeys have 62 and horses have 64. So as a result, mules are often genetically unable to reproduce. And because those genes can't be passed on, the effort is wasted by the parents. So species have barriers to prevent hybrid zygotes. Organisms' bodies may abort hybrids, but also behavior courtship plays a role in this. If species have separated, but then they come back together, they may be able to hybridize and produce fertile offspring, and then speciation may be reversed. But they may not be able to, or they may not choose to because of courtship roles that have completely changed, or what is appealing to that organism is no longer appealing. And so we can think of birds of paradise with regards to this. They all originated from the same OG bird, but now they have different feathers and different dances and stuff. And if they all came back together, the mating likelihood up for them would be very unlikely, because the dance that this bird of paradise does is so different than that one that only females that like this dance would mate with that dance. And in this case here, we have a Hawaiian duck here, and it separated from mallard ducks quite a long time ago. But due to hybridization, so mallards are now in Hawaii, and the Hawaiian duck will crossbreed with the mallard ducks. The Hawaiian duck is becoming functionally extinct because its DNA is getting mixed up with the mallard ducks. So speciation is essentially reversing. So polyploidy is when a diploid cell duplicates, but then doesn't half the cells. So you end up with 4 sets of chromosomes, 2 sets of chromosomes with copies of them. And they can interbreed with other tetraploids, but mating with diploid organisms will result in a triploid organism, and that would almost always be sterile. This is not uncommon in plants, but it's rare in animals because it can cause birth abnormalities. But higher ploidy in plants can cause them to grow more vigorously, grow faster, grow bigger. And so as artificial selection strategy, farmers would have chosen these plants with polyploidy genes because they would have had bigger, like let's say corn stalks. Allotetraploids, these are when 2 species crossbreed. The offspring has chromosomes from each species, maybe that can't cross over. And then the chromosomes duplicate via mitosis, meaning they can then cross over, but interbreeding with other allotetraploids, they can interbreed with other allotetraploids, but not with diploids. And that may make new species arise in this situation. With regards to polyploidy occurring in animals, really the only incidence we have of this, seeing this, is the Vizcacha rat of Argentina, and it is a polyploidy organism. So to summarize, speciation can be sympatric or allopatric. Hybridization is rare and usually results in sterile offspring. Polyploidy happens in plants and results in more vigorous plants, but they can't interbreed with non-polyploidy organisms. Autotetraploidy versus allotetraploidy. Those are the two types of polyploidy that can exist, and this can the polyploidiness can impact reproductive capacity of the plant because they can't interbreed potentially. And then, so for example, seedless watermelons are triploidy, but obviously not having seeds is not beneficial for a plant. Other plant polyploidies would be examples like peanuts, wheat, potatoes, bananas, coffee. And you can see here from this image, the diploid versus octoploid strawberries look very different. All right, so that's it for this video. Thank you for watching.